Chapter 7, The Visit. Soon the children had raised enough money for the old man's medicine, which Isabel bought at the local pharmacy. But it had been a difficult week. Hugo, as he walked through the station, watched the clocks begin to break down. They all had silently different times. Most terrifying of all, the station inspector had written a note to Hugo's uncle and attached it to the latest paycheck, asking for a face-to-face meeting. Hugo didn't know what to do. He just kept praying that he could avoid the station inspector until his questions about the mechanical man had been answered. At last, it was the night before the visit from Etienne and Reen to Bard. Hugo could hardly fall asleep, and that when he did, he dreamed about a terrible accident that occurred in the train station 36 years ago, which people still talked about. Hugo had heard stories about the accident from the time he was very young. A train had come into the train station too fast. The brakes had failed, and the train slammed through the guardrail, jumped off the tracks, barreled across the floor of the station, rammed through two walls, and flew out the window, shattering the glass into a billion pieces. So here's a picture of what Hugo was dreaming about. The train and all the train going through the shattered window. And you can see all the little shattered pieces from the window. In his dream, Hugo was walking by himself outside the train station when he heard a loud crash and looked up. A train was falling on him from the sky. Hugo woke in a sleep, hungry and afraid to go back to sleep. Hugo climbed out of bed and got dressed. He walked down into the train station and stole a bottle of milk. He was happy to find a tray of fresh croissants that had been left untaunted near a delivery door. He took a couple of them and hurried back to his room, where he ate and waited until it was time for the meeting. It was raining, and Hugo arrived just as Etienne and Monsieur Tabard approached with their two black umbrellas. Monsieur Tabard held some kind of large package under his arm. Isabel called to them from the window and met them downstairs on her crutches. Both men closed their umbrellas and shook off the water before moving inside the doorway. Etienne hugged Isabel. She told them all to remove their shoes. Papa Georges hates having shoes in the house. Monsieur Tabard said, "Please tell me again your godfather's full name." "Georges Malisse," said Isabel. "So it's true." He stared at Isabel for a few moments, then caught himself and said, "It's very nice to meet you, young lady. I hope this is a good time for our visit." "Yes," said Isabel, "I think so. Papa Georges is feeling a little better." "They are expecting us, are they not?" asked Monsieur Tabard. Please come upstairs." Isabel asked everyone to wait for a moment in the hallway, where Monsieur Tabard put down the large package he was carrying. Then, glancing nervously at Hugo, Isabel entered the apartment. The visitors could hear voices, and finally Isabel returned and brought them inside. "Please don't be mad, Mama Jean." The old woman had been chopping vegetables, and she was holding a very large skinny knife when she turned to see the three visitors enter her home. "Who are these people, Isabel?" The knife glinted in the dull light of the apartment. Etienne and Monsieur Tabard took a step backward. Hugo reached inside his wet jacket and took out the book that he had borrowed from the Film Academy. He handed it to Isabel. "We found out who Papa Georges was," she said to her godmother. "Hugo found this book. It told us about his movies. Monsieur Tabard wrote the book, and Etienne is his student. Please, Mama Jean, they want to help. They love Papa George's films." Monsieur Tabard straightened his bow tie and carefully stepped forward. I deeply apologize. We thought you were expecting us. We will leave immediately and return upon your request. The old woman, realizing she was brandishing a very sharp weapon, hastily put it down and wiped her hands on her apron. Please keep your voices down. My husband is sleeping. I'm sorry. I wish that my goddaughter had told me about your visit because we could have avoided this uncomfortable scene. I'm afraid I will not be inviting you back. Please, Mama Jean, don't make them leave. Madame Elise, I don't want to impose on you, said Monsieur Tabard. But if this is in fact to be the only time we meet, please let me tell you a brief story. I met your husband a long time ago when I was a little boy. My oldest brother was a carpenter whom your husband employed on many of his earliest films. He often brought me with him to the studio where the movies were being made. I remember it like I was there just yesterday. I remember how the sun shone through all the glass. I thought it looked like a palace in a fairy story. One afternoon, your husband appeared and shook my hand, and he said something to me I've never forgotten. Monsieur Tabard paused for a moment, glanced toward the closed bedroom door, and then continued. He bent down on one knee and whispered to me, if you've ever wondered where your dreams come from when you go to sleep at night, just look around. This is where they are made. So here's a picture of Papa George's, and here's a picture of Melisse Tabard. I grew up wanting to make dreams too. Your husband gave me a great gift that day. I hope one day I can repay him. Hugo remembered what his father had said about seeing his first movie as a child. He had said it was like seeing your dreams in the middle of the day. The old woman lifted the bottom edge of her apron and wiped it across her brow. I need to sit down, she said. A teen brought her chair to her, and she sat with a sigh. My husband was an important man, and I am pleased that you remembered his films with such fondness, but he's become so fragile. It's not a good idea to dredge up the past for him. We brought some of that past with us, said Monsieur Tabard. But if you don't think, what did you bring? Asked Isabel. The old woman raised her eyebrows. When I was invented here to meet a man I thought had died, I must admit I was skeptical. But I stirred by my memories of Georges Méliès. I sent a teen down to the Film Academy archives, and in the very back under a pile of old boxes, he found one of your godfather's movies. It's a little dusty, but I think it's in pretty good shape. We brought a projector with us in case you wanted to see it. We figured it might have been a long time since he's seen one of his films. Hugo and Isabel grabbed each other. Show us, said Hugo. No, I don't want to wake up Georges, said the old woman. Oh, please, let's watch it now, please, said Isabel. The old woman looked toward the closed door of the bedroom and touched the brooch at her neck. Her eyes shimmered momentarily with curiosity. At least that's what Hugo thought he saw. She covered her eyes with her hands, as thought the light was too bright. Then she shook her head and said, Be quick with it. Monsieur Tabard and a teen got the package from the hallway and unpacked the projector. They set it up on the table and looked out the film reel. A teen threaded the film through the projector and plugged the machine into an electrical outlet. Hugo closed the curtains. They aimed the projector toward one of the walls and turned it on. It clattered to life, and then the film began moving through it as light burst into the wall. Images appeared, including George's Malise himself as a young man dressed in a fake white beard and a black cape covered with stars and moons. Hugo recognized the designs. When it had fallen out of the broken box in the armoire, he had thought the black fabric was a blanket. But now, Hugo realized it was a costume from the movie, A Trip to the Moon. Hugo thought the movie was the most wonderful thing he had ever seen. He imagined his father, once upon a time, as a little boy, sitting in the dark watching this very same movie, staring into the face of the man in the moon. When the film was over, the end of it whipped noisily around and around the take-up reel until a teen turned off the machine and the rectangle of light disappeared. Everything was silent, but then the floorboards creaked and they all turned. George's Malise was standing in the bedroom doorway with tears in his eyes. "I would recognize the sound of a movie projector anywhere," he said. His wife was crying too. She walked over and put her arm around her husband. "Who are these people?" he said. Isabel introduced him to Etienne and Monsieur Tabard. "Monsieur Tabard teaches at the French Film Academy," he said, "and Etienne is one of his students. They are fans of yours." The two of them shook his hand. "What are they doing here?" Isabel explained about the automaton, how Hugo had saved it from the fire. He fixed it, and "I'm sorry I did a bad thing. I stole the key from Mama Jean, but Hugo saw the key around my neck and realized it would fit in the automaton. We wound it up, and the machine drew a picture, and then we found out everything." Her godfather smiled. "Not everything, I'm sure." Hugo reached into his pocket and took out the automaton's drawing, which he had taped back together, and handed it to the old man, who took it in his shaking hands. Everyone was silent for a long time. "Give me the projector," the old man finally said. "What?" said his wife. He walked over to the machine and unplugged it. He lifted it up and carried it into his room. Then he shut the door and locked it. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.